Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. What a championship Sunday it was at Major 4, the grand final that many predicted and many wanted as well. OpTic versus Thieves doesn't get any better than that unless there was a crowd there. The champion has now been crowned, so much to dive into today. Very much intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. We're going to dive straight in today with Thieves versus OpTic game 1. I still think this winner's final match should be the second game because technically it's the losers semi-finals that follow this. So why is there a semi before final? Whatever. These were the rotations that they went with in the map rotation. Hydro Hardpoint, an interesting starter, I thought. I think this makes sense for both parties in a way. Obviously, I thought, to be fair, OpTic would try and get Fortress in this because they've been so good at it in the period so far. They went for Mikado instead. Thieves chose Hydro. Good map for OpTic, but Thieves are different gravy on the map at the moment. Very impressive. And Expo Control I thought was interesting from the OpTic side just because they lost it to Thieves before. Thieves looked like, at times, the best team in the game on that particular map mode combination. So I thought this was slightly Thieves leaning in the first half of the series. And many people said this series is going to come down to the map one, and it came down to the absolute wire here. Honestly, this is a ridiculous hardpoint. OpTic had their chances. It was a similar affair really to when they played again in the grand finals here, but OpTic were up about 244 to 215-ish into this rotation, but Thieves really clutched up on this rotation, man. And this Thieves team is just, when they're playing on point, they don't know what, they're obviously beatable, but you know, when they're on point, they have all the elements of a championship caliber team. They've got the slaying when necessary, especially now Kenny is here to play. We know how it goes with Kenny, right? The first 3, 4, 5 months of the season, he's pretty mediocre at best, and right at the end, usually, he turns up and delivers, and we're starting to see that now from Kenny. And when he's there, they have very few weaknesses, this team. Yes, their search and destroy is sometimes questionable, but their respawn's always going to be good. Their slaying power is most certainly there. Their clutch factor is there at times. The comms obviously are absolutely unbelievable. The teamwork is best in the league level. So they've just got all the facets, right? They won the World Championship last year, and yeah, it's really impressive what they've been able to do again. And they broke OpTic's 11 hardpoint win streak here, denying the all-time record. It almost felt like this was coming in a way, playing Thieves on Hydro map 1 to try and break the all-time hardpoint win streak. It gets stopped at 11 for the fourth team now that's got their record there stopped at 11. But then the search and destroy was when it was particularly impressive, right? Because this Fortress search has been a good one for OpTic. They had their chances here, but again, Thieves, they get good first bloods. Like, their first blood achievement rate this season has been great. It's the conversions that have been poor, and now they're getting first bloods and converting. Drazah was talking about how he's played a lot more search and destroy 8s, or just S&D in general, and he's been leveling up his game. I mean, Huke and Drazah came into this series, or came into Sunday, with like a 1.8 KD each in search and destroy. So they were both on fire, but Drazah really delivered here, got up 2-0, and even as Egg said, right, it was looking like a bit of a Dashy challenge here, but in fairness, in the control, they bounced back. This is a remarkable round, actually, that OpTic managed to win. 3v3. Expo is great to watch, it's got to be said, especially compared to Fortress. Great map here between two juggernaut teams, and in the end, Thieves go down, but another hardpoint, and I would not have said coming into this series, to be honest, that if there was going to be a team that won 2 hardpoints in the series, it was going to be Thieves, but that's exactly what they did. They took down OpTic on the Mikado, despite OpTic being so good at the map so far, and they even dropped this one. Until next time, long live the king, with, you know, Scump and the skull. It's pretty cool stuff, actually, to be honest. His glasses breaking was a bit of a, you know, a mean touch, I suppose, and there was some discussion about it as a result, but yeah, Thieves in 5 of the last 9 grand finals. If you think about it, that is very impressive indeed, given, you know, people talk about the skill gap and stuff, but fundamentally, if you'd have come into this weekend trying to predict the top 3 teams, I'd have told you OpTic, Thieves, and FaZe, and guess what we got? So there's obviously some sort of a skill gap in this title, as Najot says. GG to my brothers at OpTic, see you in the finals, and that is exactly what happened. But before we get there, though, we've got to discuss what happened in the FaZe versus Subliner series. Octane as well, what a player he's been this stage. I remember early in the season, we did an Ask at Breaking Point, and Mack asked us, like, you know, who do you think the MVP is going to be of the year? And I threw Octane in the conversation, because I thought this guy, this game, it just seemed to mesh so well. We know how good he was at Modern Warfare 2019. The comms, the teamwork. Look at the grand finals he's been in as well. In 6 different COD titles now, he's been to at least 2 grand finals, which is very impressive across all those different games and eras. And, you know, Drazah gave a classic statement from him to close out the series. But yeah, these were the numbers, right? Huke had a pretty rough time of things here. Huke was very much up and down over the majority of this tournament, really, when he was getting fried. And Shotzzy had a really tough final map as well, game 4. And we know how important the SMGs are for any team, especially OpTic Texas. But we'll come back to that storyline when we get to the grand finals. Before then, though, we had to determine the 3rd place team. team. And FaZe, man, their respawn just isn't quite it. And Cellium had a real off weekend by his standards. I know that Slasher did step up. If you look at the numbers actually over the weekend, Slasher had their best KD at about a 1.1. Cellium had about a 1.05, which is around about 0.2 lower than usual. Now, that's not to say that Simp and aBeZy also didn't struggle at times, because they certainly did. But, you know, they still haven't figured out the respawn, whether it's something in terms of the roles they use, whether Cellium just had by his standards a bit of a lackluster weekend. And, you know, Simp and aBeZy didn't really ever do that much in a lot of these respawns, to be honest. It was aBeZy in the search, as we'll see in a second. That was outrageous. And, I mean, look, this might be what we're going to see in a second, the best 1v4 of all time. I don't know, like, I know there's a few 1v4s that come to mind, but I don't know if there's one that was quite as impactful as this. I mean, it's absolutely incredible what he achieved. He got a 1v3 the round before as well, and look at this. It's got to go full screen here. So aBeZy, 1 versus 4, finds the first girl in the bottom of the staircase, pretty standard stuff, dives out, and they're obviously not calling this out here. Hydra gets caught in the side. So, look, if you clutch a 1v4, there's going to be mistakes. But the way he played this, especially given he was already 10 in 4, and then was put into a 1v4 situation at 4-4 in the map, somehow gets this kill onto Skies. Priester must auto-mantle here, but he absolutely fries him for the 1 versus 4. I mean, let me just rewind quickly on this as well, because this is just beautiful to watch. aBeZy in full flow is, he plays this to perfection with the movement and everything. 1v4 for the 5-4 advantage, and that wins them the map, of course, as you'd expect it would. And that actually keeps them in the series, because they lost the control. They went down 2-1. FaZe could have got 3-0'd here if aBeZy didn't do this. Absolutely incredible stuff. FaZe do clutch up, though, on the Embassy hardpoint game 4, take it to a game 5, and that is enough for FaZe to get over the line. I thought it was going to be a 3-2 for FaZe earlier today. It was exactly that, and they move on. And yeah, actually pretty interesting. The first time in the CDL's inception that we get OpTic, Thieves, and FaZe all on a Championship Sunday top 3. FaZe top 3 is absolutely inevitable, but they go out the tournament right after this, as we shall see in a second. Cellium finally had a good series on the weekend at 1.25. aBeZy, as we know, a complete monster there, but then they had to face OpTic Gaming, and this is the issue for FaZe. When FaZe were the best team in the world and better than OpTic, they would still get beaten by OpTic. That was certainly the case last year, where at times FaZe were better than OpTic, I thought, and OpTic would still beat them. When OpTic are the better team, they're going to get absolutely crushed. I don't know what it is about this matchup. For some reason, Dashy completely owns Cellium. It's like 9-1, 9-2 all-time record between the two of them. I think that might be their LAN record as well. So, I mean, that's a key point to mention. But also, Shotzzy, his record against Slasher is insane. For some reason, Shotzzy and Huke lately just completely shut down the Tiny Terrors, and they got bodied this game 1. aBeZy 11-22, Simp 13-21. The ARs were doing okay, but it was, you know, it was Shotzzy and Huke versus Simp and aBeZy this game 1, and it was a complete shutdown. Almost took them in the 100-point club again. Their comms did sound way better, in fairness, because I know that in the first match that OpTic played at Major 3, they lost to Boston. They said afterwards their comms were way too aggro. They were just talking too much, too hyper, and once they relaxed it, calmed it down a little bit more in the losers bracket, then they started to make their run, and they played some tip-top Call of Duty here. It was a quick 2-0 as well. Mikado search and destroy. FaZe undefeated on the map so far. They went down here comfortably so. Shotzzy, 3 first bloods, 9-5, and FaZe's search and destroy was never going to last, right? Every team was going to look into it, and that's why they needed their respawn to step up if they actually wanted to win tournaments again. And I mean, OpTic just shut them down. This control, I thought OpTic were going to get reverse swept within the control. Ghosty made a crazy play to actually make it 2-0, but then it went down to a round 5, and a ridiculous round 5 at that, where OpTic had only 5 lives left on the board, 1 tick left to capture over here towards the B point, and Slasher goes down at this point, and that is, I mean, it's a full collapse of the FaZe guys, to be honest. They should not have let this happen. Ghosty gets one onto Cellium, then Slasher's getting flanked. He's in a bit of a tricky spot here. Shotzzy shoots him in the back, and then the full collapse comes in onto the point, and Simp goes down top as well. I mean, look at the play from Shotzzy. That's what he does best. I don't know if any other player in the game makes a play like that, but it gets them the win. A 3-0 for OpTic. Remarkable performance from them, and that means Ghosty joins Shotzzy and iLLeY. Obviously, you know, known a fair bit to OpTic as well. The only 3 players in the history of competitive COD to make back-to-back grand finals in their first 2 tournaments. So it's incredible what Ghosty has done for this team. But what is going on with FaZe, man? Because they don't... This is one of the weakest versions of FaZe we have seen. They, frankly, got embarrassed here. I know some people were saying, which might actually be true, this is the first time FaZe have been 3-0'd on LAN ever, like in the CDL, which just goes to show they're not where they need to be. Slasher individually played well at 1.2. He was actually their best player statistically this tournament. aBeZy, you could still argue, was in the search and destroy, but, you know, in the respawns, it wasn't quite there for aBeZy or Simp, or really even Cellium. So there's some serious problems for them to solve and some questions to answer, but still, they're top 3, right? But they are a significant class behind Thieves and a class behind behind OpTic at that. And what a grand finals it turned out to be, absolutely deserving of a crown. Unfortunately, we didn't have one. OpTic's first back-to-back final since 2017 when they won champs, but unfortunately for OpTic fans, they currently don't quite have the same championship factor that OpTic had originally. You wouldn't expect them to, really, given the fact that Ghosty's just come in, but this, I think, for many was their event to win. They were looking so dominant here. There was a questionable intro going into the series that Maven was unfortunately tasked with doing. It was kind of cringe, but whatever, they got through it. And first of all, the Hydro game one was interesting again because Thieves are super good at this map. Now, OpTic, I think this is where their auto veto comes to bite them a bit. They ban aBeZy like every series they play. They like Hydro, don't get me wrong, but against a team like Thieves, you might want to have an aBeZy in your back pocket, right? And obviously OpTic didn't want to do that, so they went for Hydro. They lost game one again, so I'm sure that's something they'll have to think about going forwards. Game two, Search and Destroy. This time they bounced back on the hotel, though. This was a grueler of a series, man. I thought it might go all the way at a time. I thought this was going to go game 7, to be honest, before the day even began, and in the end it was a game 6, another aLLEY control to decide the entire tournament. But yes, OpTic clutch up in the Search and Destroy. Thieves, if they have some weaknesses, it is part of their Search and Destroy game, still isn't absolutely stellar. But we know OpTic, when he's getting the first blood shots, he is very deadly, but in the final Search and Destroy of the series they played was a slightly different story. We go again to Expo Control, where OpTic won earlier in the day, and I thought there's no way that happens twice in a row, right? And that was indeed the case. This round eventually was won by OpTic, but it was a 3-1 for Thieves in the control, and then they found themselves in an absolute must-win Fortress hardpoint. And this is the thing, I'm kind of surprised, to be honest, they didn't choose to play this earlier in the day. They could have played it instead of Mikado, and I think they should have done, to be honest, because they are insanely good at this map. It's actually ridiculous. The maps that OpTic are good on, they are by far the best team in the game on, such as this one. They pretty much blew Thieves out the park here. This game might have been 250 to 40 if it wasn't for P3. Thieves getting a fair bit of time there, but 250 to 140 it was. OpTic comfortably won this one, and then we go into another Search and Destroy, though. This is an aLLEY search. Thieves have been great here lately. They obviously studied what FaZe were doing to be so good on this map for quite some time, and they go up for 5-1 in this map, actually. Then it goes back to 5-4 because Ghosty makes a ridiculous clutch. Octane kind of had a Mack moment. He didn't, in fairness, have a nade here, but he did have a stun he could have used. Ghosty takes him down for the 1 versus 2. That makes it 5-4, but Thieves have very good composure, right? This is a team that even if they lose rounds, they're not going to worry too much about it. They will bounce back, and that's what they did. They won this map 6-4 in the end. A big map, really, in the kind of the tide of the series. And even though Ghosty had a streak at the end, he was calling it in. Shotzzy decided to make a flank with dead silence, got caught off, and there was a few rounds like that where, when it really comes to crunch time, OpTic just don't, in my opinion, quite have yet, and they can get it over time, that championship factor. You know, there's a cutting edge. There's just a next level that you need to hit. The championship winning teams, they have. Thieves most certainly have it after what they did last season. OpTic, despite all they can do online and all that they perform in the majority of tourneys, when it comes to a grand final, it was the same story against Toronto last time. When it really comes down to the wire, the important maps, they just don't quite have what they need yet. And I think they can get there. I think they're 99% to where they need to be to start winning tournaments, but they just come up against teams that are better prepared or just straight up perform better in these crunch moments, right? And OpTic did well to force a round 5 here in the aLLEY, but in the end, Thieves dominated the offense. Huke had a decent chance to maybe get a 2 or 3 piece. Didn't happen for him. And Thieves take the championship. Firstly, got to say, I thought the champ's curse was not going to be broken for some time. The way the start of the season went for Thieves, I thought it might well have been this season, but no. Thieves become the first ever team to win the World Championship and win another event in the next season. Remarkable stuff. They might want to go back to back, honestly. Just they have basically no weaknesses, this team. Incredibly impressive performance. To me, OpTic and Thieves, comfortably the 2 best teams in the game right now. This loss for OpTic will sting, but for OpTic to be where they are, given where they were for the majority of last season and even the start of this season, is very impressive. I'm sure OpTic fans have to be partly satisfied they can make Sundays, make grand finals consistently, but they've got 2 more chances at Toronto and then Vegas for the World Championship to go one better and try and win something before the end of the year. And Thieves are certainly not going to be easy to take down after this performance. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.